Hi folks, and welcome to the very first We Paint Minis painting tutorial. Today we are going to be painting the Stormcast Storm Host, the Anvils of Heldenhammer, a really cool black and red paint scheme. The first thing we're going to do is prime the models using some Mechanicus standard grey out of a spray can. What I do is I put some warm water in a jug, put the can in, let it heat up a bit, shake it, and that gives you a better coverage. Now what we're looking for in the coverage is not necessarily like a solid colour, we're looking for just to cover the model ever so slightly. The reason this is just allow the paint to stick to the primer. It is not a base coat for your models. Once you finish priming your models, it's then on to blocking in the base colours. The first thing I'm going to do is paint the armour black. I'm going to use Abaddon black for this. I'm going to thin it down quite heavily with water using my wet palette. The reason this is to get a smooth consistency across the armour. The armour is obviously a polished metallic or metal, so the smoother the better. Don't worry about being too neat at this point. We're going to go on to the other parts of the materials and all that sort of stuff, but we can touch it up and tidy it up as we go along. You will notice some gaps in the armour. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I haven't filled them in. They are push fit models from the Mortal Realms magazine. I just wanted to show you folks the tutorial on how to paint the anvils as they are. Now we move on to painting the robes with Mephiston red. I'm going to go for the main robe rather than kind of the tabard that goes down the front for this. Usually you do it the other way around. You do the tabard red and then the main robe like a creamy colour. But I wanted to do something a little bit different. You will notice that I paint the leather straps hanging down across the abdomen in red as well. I change my mind on that and I go for a brown leather effect. Talking about painting the leather, we now move on using Rhinox hide to paint the leather areas. That's the belt, the kind of like arm straps and the dangly abdomen bits. As before, don't worry about being too neat. If you do happen to get any of the Rhinox hide on the red or anything like that, the black, you can touch it up with those base colours quite easily. Coming in now with some Xandri dust, covering the front tabard, the main little tabard there. I do recommend watering down the paint quite heavily as it has a tendency to clump up if you don't. It will require a fair few coats as well just to go over that grey. You also notice that I've painted the dangly abdomen bits, as I said, with the Rhinox hide. Now that the main base colours are all blocked in, I'm going to start to do some shadows in the main tabard at the front. What I do is I mix some of that Xandri dust, about 50-50, with Rhinox hide to get like a darker version of the Xandri dust. I then go into the recess areas and just kind of fill it in very, very loosely and very, very roughly. I then go back with plain old Xandri dust and just touch up all the areas in which I think that the recessed shade that I'd done has overflowed its recesses. I'm now going to highlight the tabard using some watered down Ushabti bone. I like to bring the paintbrush in like a glaze motion over to the highest point, the point in which it's going to hit the light the most. That way when you remove your brush, the pigment is situated and kind of concentrated there. In hindsight, I feel like that was probably too much of a step up in brightness. I probably should have done some Ushabti bone mixed in with Xandri dust, like a 50-50, and worked my way up from there. But you live and learn. And then with the white scar, just to do a fine highlight along the folds and the creases of the tabard. Now on to creating some shadows on the red robe. I do the same sort of thing as I did with the front tabard, but this time I use Rhinox hide mixed with some Mephiston red. I then kind of go in amongst the recesses and the undersides of the folds, just adding a bit of depth to the robes. Now onto highlighting the robes. I use a mixture around 50-50 Mephiston Red and Evil Sun Scarlet, just so I don't have that sharp transition from Mephiston Red to Evil Sun Scarlet. I'd like to get a bit of a gradient going on. And my camera work skills are on point, by the way.
Oh my god! Wow! Oh my god!
Once those rows have been done, I move on to edge highlighting the black armour. I start off with Dark Reaper, just making sure I kind of catch all those harsh lines and edges around the whole model. I like to edge highlight all the lines really. I'm a bit of a masochist for that, I guess. But you know, I think it looks good. I love doing it on Space Marines, I love doing it on Stormcast. So each their own. If you don't like doing that, you could just do a dry brush, I guess, using Dark Reaper to get the same effect. However, you'd have to go back in with the black just to neaten it up. I then highlight further using Fenrisian Grey. I do this on kind of like the corners and the edges that are most prominent and most sharp and harsh. I also kind of put it on the place where I know that the light is going to be hitting the most. For example, like the tops of the pauldron rim trim thingamadings. Using Gawthor Brown, we're going to highlight the leather and kind of get a weathered effect look going on. What you'll need to start off with is just kind of edge highlighting the leather areas. Don't worry about being too kind of thick with those lines. We're going to kind of blend the colours in together with Rhinox hide and the other highlight we're going to be doing after this. In order to make that edge highlight less harsh, I then water down Rhinox hide quite heavily, so it's almost like a wash, as it were. And then I just go over all those areas, just kind of bringing the two colours together. Water down some Baneblade Brown and then dip the tip of your brush in. What you want to do is kind of stipple down the edges that you've just done. Obviously let the paint dry from the step before you start doing this, otherwise it will go all horribly wrong. But stipple around the sides, around the edges, and what it will do is give like a worn leather effect. Now we just want to combine all that work we've done on that leather. We want to get some Agrex Earthshade straight out of the pot or on the desk, depending on wherever you've dropped it, and then liberally wash it over those leather areas. Now for my favourite bit, the metallics. Yay! Yes! Using some heavily watered down Retributor armour, I go around all the areas I wish to be gold. That would be the armour trim on the shoulder pads, the halo thing, the iconography and part of the mace. The reason I do water down my metallics is they have a tendency to clump and leave paint streak marks or paintbrush marks when you're applying it, so keep it moist. Straight out of the pot wash of Reikland Flesh Shade across all that gold area, and allow it to dry for a good 20-30 minutes, or use a hairdryer, which I did do. I paint the top half of the hammer using some lead belcher. This is the only silver area other than the rivets in the armour, however I kind of use a brighter version to highlight those. Grab your Drakenhof Nightshade shade, that sounds weird, and liberally coat the silver. To make things a bit easier, rather than having to go over the silver again with your base colour, you can use a brush with a bit of water on it to wick up any excess shade that you feel was too much on the flat surfaces. What I'm doing now is going back with Retributor armour just to bring back that brightness of the gold. So along the edges of the gold that I've painted and shaded down with Reikland Flesh Shade, just go back in with the Retributor armour, leaving the recessed areas dark. Here I'm just neatening up the silver, going back in with some lead belcher to tidy up the areas where I feel there's a little bit too much Drakenhof Nightshade. It's overpowering the tone, dulled it down ever so slightly. We're going over it to tidy it up. Stormhost Silver, what a wonderful colour. Very versatile, you can use it to highlight gold and silver. Who'd have thunk it? So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to highlight the gold on the edges to make it very bright and vibrant, and we're also going to do the top of the hammer as well. I want to go into a little bit of detail about how I paint white. I'm going to be using Celestial Grey, so I'm not going to be using white. I know it sounds strange, but for those of you who see my white scars, I base paint all of them with Celestial Grey, and any kind of white I base paint with Celestial Grey. It is an off-white, it's more bluey white I'd say, probably. However, the way I see it is that with white, as soon as something is white, it is no longer white, because the light is reflecting the colours and its surroundings. So I go with Celestial Grey, I then use Ulthuan Grey to highlight those colours. Using Celestial Grey, I'm going to be watering it down quite heavily and using it to do the freehand lightning bolt on the shoulder pad. The way I do it is I mark out the corners of the lightning bolt, so kind of build like a basic geometrical shape and then sketch the lines in after. I then use a Abaddon Black just to touch up any lines that I may have gone over or gone a bit strange. Now, as mentioned before, I use some Ulthuan Grey, again watered down quite heavily, to start to build like a highlight up at the highest point on the shoulder pad, or the emblem that I've done on the shoulder pad, but not only that, on the lightning bolts on the other shoulder pad, and also the lightning bolts on the shields. Every step that I've done before in regards to highlighting black and painting gold, I've done on the shield also. Now onto the weird dangly crystal soul thingamajigger. I tidied it up with Mechanica Standard Grey just so I had a flat surface, a clean surface to work on, and then base coated it with White Scar. I then go over that white with some Cantor blue. The reason we painted it white before was to get a more vibrant colour from our blues. It's a crystal after all, so we want to kind of give like a nice cool glow effect. It's Drakenhof Nightshade again, and we're going to cover over all that blue just to get that darkness in the recesses. Using Cantor Blue again, we're going to tidy up what we just done with the Drakenhof Nightshade, but making sure we leave the recesses dark. We're going to try now go for a gradient effect using Temple Guard Blue. We're going to start off about 2/3 up the tip of the crystal and work our way down to the point. We'll do that very similar on the top as well, so don't paint all the Cantor blue that you've just done with Temple Guard. Make sure you leave some of it showing so it gives the illusion of depth. Now highlight the facet lines using Baharoth Blue. We're almost there on the crystal. It's quite a lot of paint going on there, but it's a very intricate piece that with a little bit of time can really accentuate the model. Back with White Scar, we're just going to highlight the very tip of the crystal as well as the corners where the facet lines meet. I wasn't overly happy with the contrast levels on the red robe, so what I did is I went back with some Fire Dragon Bright and just used it to kind of finely highlight some of the harder edges or the corners just to add a little bit of definition. And with that last step, the model is now finished. If you were interested in finding out how I painted the base in a temple desert theme, then let me know in the comments below. I have recorded the footage, however this video is getting rather long. It was my first one and I didn't want to push myself that far, so if you would like to see it, please let me know in the comments below and I will put something together. A huge thank you to everyone who watched this video and for those of you who stuck around to the end. If you did enjoy what you see, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. If you know some friends who are painting the Anvils of Heldenhammer, then share it. It would really help me. So thank you all once again and I'll see you next time.